Wonderful. So this is a meeting that was brought to you by the Teach LA Regional Collaborative, and it's a series of workshops that we're going to have throughout the whole month of May. Today's workshop is 10, I'm sorry, I have my title here, 10
Essential Tips to Thriving in the Classroom.
Yes, brought to you by Ms. Renee Marshall. Renee Marshall is an education advocate who has been supporting California community colleges since 2004. Renee served as an adjunct and full-time faculty, and she is such a wonderful person to have. She is a professional with lots of years of experience. I will let Renee introduce herself quickly because she can explain a little bit better, but she is wonderful. She will be our presenter today for the workshop.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Yadira. I also want to encourage anybody or everybody at any time, if you have any questions, please put them in our chat box. I am purposely making sure that we leave time in this workshop so that way we can address personal questions that people have, because I think that's really important. And so please, also I want to point out in the chat box, I have put my email and my cell phone. If at any point you'd like to connect after the workshop, I'm here to be a resource for you. I have been in the field of education, oh my gosh, for so long. I was thinking about it today, actually. The first time I started teaching, I was a tap dance teacher when I was 12 years old. I was granted the opportunity to be an assistant teacher. And so starting from 12 years old is when I started working with children and families and our education systems, in a sense, and training people. So thank you so much for having me here today. Today I'm going to be focusing on some essentials to thriving in the classroom. And with this workshop, I just want to note a lot of what we'll be talking about today will be more relevant for people who are either current or future K-12 educators, though a lot of the tips will be relevant, honestly, for any group that you're teaching. But it is geared a little bit more for K-12 educators. Before I came into the community college system, I was a K-12 educator, and I'm trained as a K-12 administrator as well. And so I have had the opportunity to spend large portions of my career in both education systems. So anyways, I'm thrilled to be here today. Very, very excited and looking forward to our workshop. So thank you, Yadira. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you to the LA Teach Regional Collaborative, and special thanks to El Camino College for hosting this workshop today.
Wonderful. Renee, can I just quickly say, so just like Renee said, and I want to reiterate, please make sure that you put your questions on the chat box. I will be diligent on checking the chat box, and I will let Renee know if there's a question that you want to ask. But make sure that everything you're directed to the chat, we'll be looking out for it. And like Renee mentioned, she did put in her email and her cell phone, and we will also put in the Regional Collaborative website for any more information you guys want to have on that. All right, Renee, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Excellent. I also noticed on the chat that somebody already asked if I can email out contact information at the end of the webinar. I'm happy to do that as well. And really, I am open to dialogue. I love talking education. So if I can be a resource to you, please reach out. I would love to talk more beyond this today. Okay, so let's go ahead and get going. First thing I want to share with you. Today, we're going to be talking about the essentials to thriving in the classroom. And one thing I want to emphasize is this is about thriving in the classroom, not surviving in the classroom. Right now in the pandemic, we are absolutely in a survival mode. For those of you that are college faculty, those of you that are K-12 faculty, those of you that are early childhood teachers, we are absolutely just trying to finish the school year. So right now is kind of a survival mode. But what I'm really talking about is really striving for like the thriving, not just a survival, but really thriving as much as possible in the classroom. Now, before we get into those 10 essential tips for thriving, I want to talk for just a few minutes about the current state of education right now. And I think this is really, really important. Right now, currently in California, we educate over 6.1 million children in our K-12 system. In our community colleges, we educate 2.1 million people. In our CSUs, we educate over 500,000. And in our UC system, we educate 285,000. When we also look at preschool data, we realize that we in total educate well over 9 million students annually in the state of California. And the reason why I share this with you is because it's important to remember there's 9 million people that need to be taught. This is a hard time to be in education. For those of you that are future teachers that are on this webinar, you may be getting some people in your family like naysaying and saying, oh, why would you want to be a teacher? Or, you know, for a while, people were talking about, oh, all teachings are going to happen to, robots will be teaching us. It'll be all artificial intelligence. I am here to tell you the good news. Teachers aren't going anywhere. We need you too. California right now is in a teacher shortage. We are in a crisis. So please don't let anybody tell you that right now isn't a good time to go into teaching. Is it hard? Absolutely. But sometimes, I like to think of it, sometimes in the hardest times, we have the phoenix rise out of the ashes and end up having something wonderful and beautiful come out of a hard time. So here's what I'm here to tell you. Right now, one thing that's great, we're seeing more people in credential programs than we've seen in a while. Unfortunately, the amount of people we have in credential programs does not currently meet the need we have across the state. So there's a mismatch. What does that mean? That means a lot of underqualified people end up in the classroom. And that's hard for the children and families. That's also hard for those teachers that talk about the difference between thriving and surviving. Another thing to point out, in California, there are specific pockets of types of teachers that we are more in need of right now. Right now, whenever somebody comes to me and says, I want to be a special education teacher, I'd say, you've got the golden ticket. There's so many different resources available for those of you going into special education to help you to get into the classroom. For those of you, other areas that are really needed as well, bilingual ed. We need bilingual teachers again. We are back to dual immersion programs. For those of you that are newer to the field, we had dual immersion programs in the 90s, and then they got voted out with legislation and things got a little crazy. So anyways, we need more bilingual teachers. We also have a huge deficit of highly qualified STEM teachers within all different STEM fields. And that's scary because there's so many jobs coming up in those different STEM areas that we need to be able to be preparing that future workforce. Another area that is a huge kind of gap in terms of the teacher workforce, but I also look at it as an opportunity, is career education. We need CTE, career technical education teachers, in both our junior highs, our high schools, and our colleges right now. So if you have somebody or you know somebody who's in industry and would be interested in being a teacher, come and have them talk to us, because we can help them to go from one place to something different. And I'll tell you one thing about education. It is a field where you get to, I always said it was like, I get to be my best person every day. I didn't have to be non-ethical. I didn't have to be like a bad person. In education, you can give back to this world. You can do something better. And so for people who are considering career changes, people who are currently in industry, please consider the field of education, and we're here to tell you. Another couple areas just quickly that I think are important to note, in early childhood education, we are desperately in need of teachers within early childhood education as well, and it's so important. We also see in the field of education from a broader sense, a much bigger need for speech pathologists, occupation therapists, counselors. I will tell you right now, with the pandemic, we will need more counselors in our education system than we've ever needed in the past. I don't see that as a negative. I've thought for the last 10 years that we've needed a lot more counselors in our education system. So once again, kind of something good that might come out of this pandemic. But just know that within the field of education, there's lots of different opportunities for work right now, lots of different possibilities for pathways. It is a good time to come into the field of education. And we're here to help you. So you can reach out to me, Yadira, or anybody who's in the California Community College Teacher Preparation Group, and we're happy to help. So now, let's spend a few minutes getting into essentials for thriving in the classroom. Okay, first thing, anytime, and I literally just labeled it to 10 points that I think are most important. And some of these are going to be like no-brainers, but I hope some of these are going to be some kind of little golden nuggets that will help you moving forward in your career in education. First of all, we have to stay student-centered for everything we do. The students are at the core of everything, every single thing we do, from curriculum to creating scheduling to whatever it is. Those students should be at the forefront, and that's not always easy to do. We understand that students need wraparound services. That means that if you have a student maybe who's in high school, they might need counseling. They might need like if they're taking some college classes or they're getting ready to go to college, they might need to connect with financial aid or other services that are going to help them to be the best student that they're going to be. That's our job as educators, to figure out what each student needs and to provide that for them. I consider it, honestly, it doesn't matter of the age of the student that you're working with. I consider our duty of individualizing instruction truly like an IEP. When we have IEPs within special education, individualized education plans, it's basically the roadmap for what that student needs to learn that year or within a couple years, and where the gaps are that they have and whatnot. And it's like this full battery of who the student is, where they have their struggles, where they have their successes, and how we're going to move them forward as educators. I don't understand why we only limit that type of individualized planning to our children and our students with special needs. I understand it's really time consuming, but if we are going to really and truly give each student what they need, we're going to have to operate in a way where every child has an individualized learning plan where we're working together to move them forward. And that's really different. It's really time consuming. Right now, though, with COVID, we have to stay student-centered because we are in such a different time in the classroom. In the past, academic needs, academic rigor has always been at the forefront of what our priorities are in education. Now, don't get me wrong, depending on what school and what district, where you're teaching, you may have an emphasis for the year or an emphasis for multi-year that maybe isn't an academic emphasis. But if you look overall in the state of California, and you look at our partners of Department of Ed and the other agencies that help create our education system, we really have created a system where many, many students are always just striving to be the best they can academically, and there's nothing wrong with that, except during a pandemic. During a pandemic, that academic push cannot be at the forefront of what we're doing with our students. By all means, we still want to have good content and we still want to have rigor. But if our students are not socially, emotionally well right now, how can we expect them to learn? And in the pandemic, we are seeing, well, first of all, before the pandemic, we were seeing like national levels of mental health and depression with children at younger and younger ages spiking like we've never seen before. Now with the pandemic, this will be our next crisis. And as educators, we really need to say to ourselves, I'm going to stay student-centered, and my goal with staying student-centered means that I'm going to look at that whole student that's in my classroom, whether they're physically in my classroom right now, or they're distance learning, or they're hybrid, or whatever it's going to look like moving forward. We still need to stay student-centered, and we still need to say, what are your emotional needs? What are your social needs? And how am I going to provide those, especially in a two-dimensional format right now? And here's the thing, everybody. We keep hearing, there's going to be this academic, huge gap due to the pandemic, academic gap. Yeah, there is. But here's the thing. There's going to be an academic gap across the world, which is what a beautiful time for us to step back and say, we'll catch up later. Right now, we need to make sure that all of the people that are in our care are socially and emotionally able to make it through this. So that way, once we get through it, we'll get back to more of the hardcore academics and that push. Right now, we really need to be looking at the whole child and the impact the pandemic is having on the social emotional health. It is essential as the teacher, as the educator. We are the model. We are the models of creating balance for children. We are the people who train parents what balance looks like for a child. We are the people that society looks to for how this next wave of education is going to look like. So first of all, let's be striking for balance. Let's be striking for and striving for really servicing the whole child. Number one, always though, and I think we've seen this in the pandemic more than anything, flexibility has to be at the forefront. It just has to. Right now, we as teachers, we provide the structure, we provide the routine, we provide the distance learning that the kids need right now, and that families need right now, and that college students, they all need that right now. They need that structure from us. They need that routine. But they also need for us to say it's going to be okay. And if somebody reaches out to you saying, hey, can I have a little more time? Can I do this modification? I'm struggling today. Can I do this tomorrow? Now is a great time to say, absolutely. I will take it from you whenever you are able to get it to me. Now, I know that's not always possible with timelines and end of the school year and whatnot, but be flexible when you can. Most importantly, care for the whole child, care for the whole person. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about is the importance of valuing relationships. Now, a lot of times when we're in education, we perceive our relationships as our like our colleagues and our superiors. So a lot of times, and students, of course, and so a lot of times people will put huge emphasis on having a great relationship with their boss, or a stellar relationship with all their buddies and their colleagues that they work with, maybe all their same teachers on the same grade level, something like that. But the reality is, when you are at a school site, when you are an educator, the relationship you have with every single person in that space has equal value. So the relationship you have with your principal or your boss has equal value. Actually, honestly, I got to be honest on this one. It might even have more value here. Like I was going to say equal value to your relationship with your office manager or your custodian. But I'm going to tell you the truth. As somebody who was in the K-12 classroom for years, if you don't have a good relationship with those key people on your campus, your custodian, your office manager, your support staff, it doesn't matter how good your relationship with your principal or your boss is. It just doesn't. The principal, the person who's in charge, helps to keep everything running, often behind the scenes. But when you're in a classroom and you've got a child who's vomiting or something, is happening on the spot, those support staff throughout your system are the people who make it work. I will tell you another thing too. I did mention office manager, the relationship with an office manager, and that might sound kind of silly. I learned very early in my career that an office manager, I understood the importance of an office manager's role. And I did that because I was partnering. This was back in the time where you had a morning and a kindergarten or morning and afternoon kindergarten teacher. And I was partnering with somebody who had a little bit of a beef going on with somebody in the office. And I didn't think it was like a big deal at all. I really thought it was going to blow over. And I watched as the office manager basically started blackballing this teacher. And over the course of the year, it became her job as the teacher became incredibly more challenging because her relationship with the office manager of the school site was strained. So it's imperative when we're talking about the importance of valuing relationships that we are talking about relationships at every single level within the education hierarchy. And I wish we didn't have a hierarchy, but we do. Those of you that are in those of you that are serving right now, I hope you agree and you say, yeah, because it's really.
Yeah, it is. I want to point out that Carol Espinosa is also saying so true in regards to what you were talking about.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm wondering too, we're talking about the importance of relationships, but how do we value people and relationships during distance learning? I don't know about you guys. That's a work in progress for me right now. But I'm learning little things, like I'm making sure I'm sending video messages, and I'm getting a lot more creative and clever about how I'm communicating with people. And, one of the things I find in the pandemic that's been incredibly helpful is to just call people directly. People are almost like stoked when they hear a voice right now that's not sitting on the computer and it's coming from another way. And so what's most important with the relationships right now, especially for those who are ending a school year, ending a semester, right now, take the time to remind people that they matter. Everybody's maxed out. This is a very hard, May is a really rough time of the year in general. You add a global pandemic on top of it, we have so many people struggling. So if you have it in you right now, say to yourself today, which 5 people am I going to reach out to that I haven't talked to yet? And just remind them, hey, you matter. Be as simple as an email, a text, just something really important. But right now, staying healthy, encouraging the connectivity, these relationships, like this is what is absolutely key to survive this pandemic that we've got right now. First of all, they're always important, but right now it's a whole different level of importance.
Renee, you have a couple of announcements here on the chat. So we have one from Deborah, which I think it's really important, and I really, really
Sure.
like this one. And Deborah says, it is a struggle at times. Right now, you really realize who you are working with and their personalities.
Yeah.
And we have one from Sandra who says, my school has been doing handwritten letters from teachers to our preschool students. It was the best feeling ever getting a drawing back in the mail. A great way to let our families know they matter. Wow, I love that.
I love it. Sandra, I love that you put that too. We had Teacher Appreciation Week, and I have twins that are 13 years old and in 8th grade. And it was kind of tricky because I didn't want to just like email a gift card. And so I straight up, now I have to give you a disclaimer. I used to teach at the school that my twins go to. So I have a little bit more flexibility than maybe some other people, but I literally emailed all the teachers and said, hey, we'd like to drop your presents off. What are your home addresses? and we proceeded to drop off at 5 different teachers' houses over 2 days. And one of the most exciting things, I didn't know if I was crossing a boundary, I gotta be totally honest with you, but I knew in terms of the relationships, I knew my kids needed it. And so I was figuring, you know what, I'm just gonna cross a boundary and see what happens. Except the flip happened. I literally showed up at one teacher's house, and he had a gate on his front door, and then he had the door. And so we drive up, he's got the door open, and he's literally, I wish I could stand up and show you guys, he's like standing like this behind the gate, just waiting for my kids to show up. And it was so wonderful to drive up and to literally have the teacher standing there just waiting. Then another teacher came out and said, like walked outside and said, "This is the best part of my day." And it was like, I thought I was doing it for my children. And the reality was, it was reciprocal. You could see that thirst for the relationship on both sides. I love that people are saying that they're, sending care packages. I talked to a AP teacher last week, that delivered 45 hard copies of the rubric for her AP students for their tests directly to their homes. She drove them around town to make sure that every kid would have exactly what they need, whether they had online resources or not. And that's the kind of dedication we need. And that's the kind of dedication that's important to note too. It's exhausting, and it simultaneously will nourish your soul. So those relational things, if you've got time, do them. One of my best favorite early childhood educators in my community, she owns a preschool. She hand sewed 110 felt hearts filled with rice and mailed them to her 110 preschool students with a handwritten note for each of them.
Love it.
Now, I'm 46 years old, and I don't know about you, but would you be keeping that heart for your entire life?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I would have.
Right.
So the relationship is so key. Yadira, what were you going to say?
I was going to tell you, we're having a lot of great comments, a lot of great discussions, and maybe you want to touch base. Jasmine says that they video call. Yes, I like to video call my coworkers because it's great to talk to them. Also for my students, I have office hours where they can just talk about life. How great is that?
Perfect. I love it. And I love that you said also having some time with your colleagues. One of the best things that me and my colleagues did the first week of official quarantine was we all had a happy hour on Friday night, and we originally scheduled it for like 45 minutes. And we had all of us on for over 3 hours. And it was literally, you talk about filling the bucket. My bucket was over, like it was so gushing afterwards. It was exactly what we needed. Okay, I'm going to get on to another one because I want to talk all day because I think you guys can probably sense my energy. I love what we do. We are blessed to be in this field of education. Okay, number 3 for essential tips. Enjoy your curriculum. You've got to dive deep into what you do and become the strongest person who you can be. A couple years into teaching, I changed districts, and I had already taught a couple grades, but I knew I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. And I literally walked into an interview for a 4th grade position. And they said to me, "Oh, this is for a 4th grade position. It sounds like you want to be a kindergarten teacher." And I literally said to them, "I'm going to be totally honest with you. If you hire me as a 4th grade teacher, I'll be great. I'll be hardworking. I'll get everything done. If you find a kindergarten position for me in your district, I will be a superstar. I will be one of the top teachers in your district, if not the top teacher in your district. I eat, I breathe kindergarten." And they were like, oh, they were so taken back because it was at a time when you didn't negotiate stuff like that. You know what happened? They called me later in the day to offer me my kindergarten position. They happened to find one in the district. So enjoy your curriculum, love it, be the best you can be at it. Now, right now, we're in this distance learning disequilibrium. I'm not gonna lie, but I look at it as this. This is what we need to do in the next couple weeks. We're like in survival mode, doing the best we can for students through May, through June. The second your year ends, you have got to disconnect. You have got to relax. You've got to rejuvenate. You need to create a schedule, like a vacation, intentional vacation schedule for yourself. Because this summer, after you rest, you are going to have to become a distance learning expert. Because the expectations of your customers right now are very different than what the expectations will be come fall. I purposely follow a lot of different online parenting chat rooms and chat groups in order to kind of keep a pulse of what's going on with parents in my region. And I will tell you, they are ready to go back to a regular classroom structure within this distance learning world. I don't know if it's feasible, but here's what we need to do. After we rest and relax this summer, we have all got to be hustling and getting a ton of professional development before the school year starts. And here's the great thing. Those of you that are on the line right now, we didn't even know if people would show up at this time of the year. I've got to be honest. We were worried because we knew that it's end of semester, end of the school year, people are going to be busy and whatnot. But we also knew that people were hungry for it. And so here's what we have to say to you. The Los Angeles region, the Teach Los Angeles Regional Collaborative and El Camino College, we're committed to providing the professional development that you need. And we're in a place right now that we can offer some online workshops where the cost is really minimal for us and we can broadcast it to a large group. So here's what I'm throwing out there. Let us know what you need for this summer so we can get it on the books. Do you need a Zoom 101? Do you need Google Cloud? What do you need? Because we can find the experts to do it. And honestly, I really think that's really our commitment. We know that everybody who's on the call right now is going to have to be a digital learning expert within a very short amount of time. So let us know what we can do to help you, because in the end, we all want to know our curriculum and be so strong as possible. But if we can't use the vehicle to deliver it, that's not going to work. So we want to make sure that we've got our curriculum and we've got the vehicle. Okay, point number 4. I hope this doesn't sound silly, but this is something that I think is so important in education. And it's simple. Be great. No one wants a teacher that is only so-so. Have you ever engaged with a student or a parent who was like, yeah, so-and-so, you know what? They were an okay teacher. It was my best year ever. No. Or, oh, so-and-so was an awful teacher, but you know what? My kid had a great 6th grade. Not usually. We set the tone. So when we're great, our students tend to be great. When we're healthy, when we're rested, when we're motivated, our students will mirror what we bring to the table. So we all want the same fundamentals in this world. You know, we all want to feel competent. We want to feel valued. We want to feel cared for. We want to nurture those fundamental Maslow, very beginning, basic fundamental needs from the moment that we're working with our students. Because if we are making sure that we're meeting all of their needs and not just the academic, but really providing wraparound services and providing best practices throughout all we do, then we will see greatness in those that are in our classroom. Often, really, if you have a moment where you're with a group of people, either children, teenagers, adults, and they're struggling, do some self-reflection, because a lot of times they're not the only ones struggling. Another thing to note too, right now, parents and teachers need us in totally different ways. They need us to step up to the plate. Number 5, in order to be thriving and not surviving, we need to maximize our effectiveness by meeting each student where they are, not where we think they should be, or where, you know, a lot of times we place judgment. We'll go, oh, it's a 7th grader and they just came out of this elementary school, so here's where they're going to be with math. Really? No. Let's go ahead and meet that student. Let's figure out who they are. Let's get to know them. Let's do some assessments. Let's know them by name. I'll tell you, you know, one of the best things I ever did when I was an elementary and junior high teacher, I didn't know I shouldn't say that. I knew each of my kids' names. I knew how to say them correctly. I knew their brothers' names. I knew their sisters' names. I knew their mom's names. I knew their dad's names. It's so important that when you're meeting people where they are, it's not what you think they should be, but it's just who they are and where they are at that minute, and just coming up and being like, I'm open and I'm here to teach you and I'm here to get you to the next place. One of my hardest things happened my 2nd year of teaching. I was, at the time I was teaching kindergarten, and I was teaching a morning kindergarten, and we didn't have an afternoon kindergarten for me to do additional time in. And so I became a reading specialist. And it was great. I'm like, a reading specialist? I have no formal training for that. Of course I'll do the job, because we're educators and that's what we do, right? And I literally said, sorry, I just spilled some water, Murphy's Law. And I literally said, I've never been trained to do this. And my principal goes, don't worry, we've got a room with all sorts of supplies. You're really just going to try to move the kids forward. Well, the first day that I met kids, I had fifth graders that were reading at first grade levels. I had sixth graders that were reading at sixth grade levels. So I had kids that were very far behind. I had kids that were advanced. They gave me everybody. And it was incredibly difficult, but it taught me right from the beginning of my career that as much as I wanted my sixth grader Tim or my fifth grader Tim to be a proficient, fifth grade reader at that point, if he was in first grade in terms of his academic development with reading, how dare I bring fifth grade material and curriculum that will just inundate him and make him feel like more of a loser? My job is to be like, Tim, ooh, guess what? I found some really interesting things that we're going to work on reading together. What I did with Tim, honestly, is I bought all these car magazines and we'd read these articles on cars. And after a semester, he grew 3 grade levels with his reading. Was he a fifth grade reader at the end? No, but he was up to 4th grade after being at 1st grade. And that felt like huge success. So meeting people where they are, meeting our students where they are is absolutely essential. The next key for thriving in the classroom, and this one is going to be kind of tricky, especially right now when we're in our 2-dimensional, distance learning mode, is we have to set boundaries. It's important to set boundaries at all times, but especially within distance learning time. It's not necessary to be online all weekend. It's not necessary to respond to emails the second they come in, if it's 5 o'clock on a Friday, or if it's Sunday morning at 7:30 a.m. It's okay to try to be on an 8 to 3 schedule or an 8 to 5 schedule, what you normally have as your contract. You need to set the boundaries that are going to work for you. Early on in my career, I used to give out my cell phone. I thought it was imperative that people should be able to reach me at all times. I didn't learn my lesson until one of my college students decided to contact me at 3 o'clock in the morning with a text message question about financial aid. Now, I've got an 85-year-old mother. So when I have somebody contacting me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I have like alarms literally that start going on, if you know what I mean. But here's the beauty. The student did that, and it became blatantly obvious that it was an opportunity to create some new boundaries. So here's what I'm saying. It's really important that we model it for our students. If we don't want students to be emailing us at 3 in the morning expecting a response by 10 a.m., why are we doing it? We can set our emails to we could email all weekend and then set our Outlook to send it all at 6 a.m. on on Monday morning or whatnot. So set healthy boundaries, set the boundaries you need. It took me about 20 years to realize that. So for those of you that are newer in the field, please take that word of advice now as much as possible. Another thing I want to note too and share with you, I never was friends or I never communicated with my families and my students via online platforms like, friending people on Facebook or following them on Instagram or Snapchats, whatnot. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to set that boundary. And now that some of my kindergartners are in their 20s, I have become friends with some of them because it's a different story now when they're adults. But one of my rules with them is if you're in my classroom, I'm not going to be on a social platform, not an academic, but a social communication platform with you or your parents. I'm going to do it as a business, like I would as a professional. And then once you're out of my classroom, then we can reevaluate that. I don't think that it's, I'm trying to think of how to say it. I just want healthy boundaries, Another thing that's important to note for those of you that do have a huge social media presence, nothing is private. Please, please do not believe that your social media persona is private. One of my very favorite student teachers I ever had in my classroom could not get hired for so long. And I couldn't understand why. And I wasn't friends, at this time Facebook was big. I wasn't friends with her on Facebook, but I decided to look and check out and see if there was a reason why maybe she wasn't getting hired. I knew her resume and everything looked good. I go to her Facebook page, and I'm not exaggerating at all. Opening page is her with a 60-some ounce beer stein filled with beer. And I thought, okay, your first picture is you drinking a humongous beer. That's not the first thing that comes to mind when I say kindergarten teacher I want to hire. Do you know what I mean? So please don't believe that what you do online is private. Just operate as if everything is public, and then you'll be safe. Another thing too, it's great to kind of safeguard from a little social media from your families that you work with, because when you are a public school educator, when you're a teacher, people feel like they own you. They feel like they own us. They don't, but it's important to remember they are our customer. So that's something to note. But so it's good to set those boundaries. It's really healthy to do. Okay, a couple more quick tips and then we'll open up for some questions and discussion. Seventh thing, find a partner in crime. And I say this sometimes and people kind of giggle, and I'm just going to be totally honest. Education is so hard. And if you go to a site and you're brand new somewhere, within the first day or two, you've got to find a best buddy or somebody who just you get along with, and you just, have a feeling you're going to like kind of watch each other's backs. I have always done that my entire career, even as I changed schools, and I changed my partner in crime to somebody different. And I say partner in crime, I know that sounds silly, but it would be things like I had a partner in crime one year. I was teaching fifth grade, and I would teach her kids art and PE, and she would teach my kids science. We traded off a couple times a week. And it was because in addition to her multiple subject credentials, she also had a degree in science. So why would I be, it made more sense for her to do it. So literally my partner in crime is this woman, Christine. And I knew she was a partner in crime because I went to her and I said, okay, Christine, between our two classes, we've got almost 70 kids. Would it be crazy if we did like a full-blown like musical with all 70 kids with like dancing and singing and the whole thing? And she looked at me and she's like, it's going to be crazy, but so much fun. And I knew from the moment she was in it. So when you have that partner in crime, that's the person who helps you on the day that you're sick and you don't have subplans, or the day that there is a traffic big rig accident on the 5 or the 405 or the 101 and you can't get there. That partner in crime is the person who's going to believe in your ideas and help them to come to fruition. They're going to help create an environment for the students, often collectively, that makes it a better experience. Your partner in crime can be found no matter where you're teaching. And it might be another teacher, but it might be another person on staff that's not a teacher. So always keep your eyes out.
Renee, I want to just let you know that is so true. And I'm just pitching in because as those of you who got on earlier, I was talking to Renee and Bobby because they are my partners in crime. When I have a crazy idea, I reach out to Bobby and she'll be honest. She'll let me know you are completely nuts and out of your mind, but I will help you. So
but that's good though, because we walk each other off the ledge. I mean, a perfect example, Yadira, can I share a little what happened?
Absolutely.
Okay, Yadira is a faculty member at a college, and today is when final exams are due. She had a student who has been out of touch 4 weeks and has not turned in assignments for weeks and weeks and weeks now. Contact her today and say, okay, I want to check in with you about everything. And so it's really tricky because as Yadira wants to be customer focused and making sure that students' needs are being met, it's important at times where colleagues say, you know what, girl, you're getting taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. Even if this was on Friday, it's a different discussion, but the day of the final exam, sorry, too late. And as hard as it was for Yadira to hear that, I think it was like kind of helpful for her to hear us go, no, it's okay to say no at this point.
Exactly.
And so that partner in crime is really that colleague, that friend who you really thrive together. You help each other thrive.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much, Renee. And I want to let everybody else knows I'm writing down the tips. So once Renee finishes them, I'm going to reiterate them. But just wanted to point that out. I also want to point out that Marini. Hi, Marini. We love that you're here. She said that she was
awesome.
Hi.
Hi, Marini. I love that my technology skills have helped somebody today.
I love it.
Totally. Such a huge life changer. My mind is blown. Thank you.
But honestly, Marini, when I was chair of early childhood, I spent my life emailing at 3 a.m. for years, thinking that was normal. And I started seeing my colleagues doing it more because I was. And so I found that magic ship it all later. It was like, yes.
Definitely. I'm going to have to look up a tutorial for that. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe it'll be one of our professional developments this summer. That's what it's all about. Maybe we do something on working smarter.
And you know what? Working on that, on the technology, and also how to create your curriculum with Zoom breakout rooms.
Oh, I actually already have somebody right now working on a Zoom training for us. He's developing it right now.
Oh
So
my God, yes.
I've got somebody that I'm helping to develop a Zoom 101 for all
I
of us.
was thinking about it this weekend. I didn't text you guys at 4 on that, but it was in my head. I was like, okay, maybe we should do like how do we do like a Zoom curriculum? So you're
Yeah, we definitely will. I think if people here on here feel that need, let us know and we'll roll it, you know? Okay, before we get to questions, I have a couple more real quick tips here.
Okay.
And I said this a little earlier, but I want to reiterate it again. We have to have a customer service focus. We often think as education as if it's this like some like mythical kind of place to be. The reality is this runs just like any other business. And we need to think about it that way, especially when we heard about the budget cuts we're going to be getting. So it's really important to think about that. Remember, the student in front of you, the customer that is in front of you, the person that is in front of you is your most important customer. So don't ever forget that customer service emphasis. Tip number 9. Prepare for your first year. For those of you that are beginning teachers or getting ready to start your first year, your first year is unlike anything you will experience in your life. You will be more exhausted than you will probably ever be your entire life, except for those of us who are on the strand who are moms of twins. We understand a whole different level of exhaustion. But also for those of you your first year too, in addition to being totally exhausted, you will be so inspired and so motivated your first year in the classroom. So here's one tip. For those of you that are just going to be stepping into the classroom soon, try to keep that first year of your class as chill as possible. And I know that sounds completely ridiculous, but for instance, if you're starting in a classroom in fall, this is not the time to get married. This is not the time to have a baby. It's not the time to plan a major move. It's not the time to be in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, etc.
Whoops.
Oops. But here's the good thing. We're already talking in May for what's going to happen in August, right? But here's something that's important. That first year, if you can avoid any of those huge monumental life changes, avoid it, because you're going to be giving so much to the classroom that your balance will be off at the beginning. Getting the balance takes some time. Here's one thing I did. And not everybody agrees with this, but I'm going to be very honest. I have always taken my days off. I know that sounds selfish or however you want to perceive it, but here's the reality. I knew that, and I didn't wait until I was like death and dying sick. If I started to get ill, if I, of course, was really ill, if I was mentally and physically exhausted, I learned that if I gave myself mental health days, if I gave myself the gift of time, and I'm saying I'm giving it to myself, but the truth is we earn it. When we are paid for those days off, why don't we use them? Take them. It's so healthy. It's so healthy. My last point before we get to some questions today, and this one is something that I see as the most important point of all of this. You've got to keep your fire in the belly. You've got to keep your passion in education. You've got to surround yourselves with colleagues that uplift you, with families that support you as much as possible. Like keep your circle, the people that nourish your soul. If you keep your fire in the belly, you will continue to be not just a good educator, but you will be a stellar educator. People look for those teachers who want to make change, who believe that they can change the world. Like we can be the change for our students. We get the opportunity to do what we love every day. So it's really our job to keep that nourishment going. And it could be something as taking a day off, going to the beach, collaborating with your friends, having a Zoom social, whatever it is that's going to keep your passion for what we do. Right now, children, teens, and young adults, they are relying on us as educators to model for our students. We need to show them how we're going to get through this pandemic and how we're not only going to survive it, but how we are choosing to thrive in the pandemic and to thrive as educators. Our approach, what we choose, is what others take on as their model. Always remember, I'm going to leave you with this last bit and then we'll open it up to questions. Always remember, be the person and the teacher that your students need you to be. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions. And hopefully some people on the group have some things that they want to talk about.
So we'll open it up. Marini, as always, yes. Marini says, thank you for that analogy. Absolutely. Students, it's like customer service, like Renee said. We will open it up for everybody here. If you guys have questions, go ahead and type it in the chat or go ahead and mute yourselves and ask the questions. We have one from Deborah. What is the best way to set communication boundaries with parents? That's a good one.
I think that's a great one. Also, Deborah, if you don't mind my asking, what age are you working with normally? Like what age are the parents or the kids that you're working with normally? Sorry, you know what? Can you say it one more time? It took a second for your volume to go on. Can you say it one more time? Preschool. Oh my gosh. Okay. I taught preschool for years. I love preschool parents, but they are very, very needy. And so, and it's tricky because you really feel like, because with preschool parents, they'll be like, oh my gosh, my child's not reading. Oh my gosh, my child's having this toileting issue. Like every single, it's not about academics as much usually. It's often like behaviorally, I don't know what to do. I would, depending on your school and your center that you work with, I would honestly, one of the things that I used to do that I have found to be really effective is I would start out the year by sending out a communication survey. So I could say, hey, so-and-so, what works best for you for communication? Within that survey, I would let parents know, I'm going to set up a system of how it's going to work for me this year. For instance, I'm going to be available from this time to this time. If you're on the floor with your students, parents can't reach you during the day unless it's an emergency usually, right? So that's one of the things they need to understand. And you can say, okay, I'm on the floor with the kids from this time to this time. Please only call our center during this time if it's an emergency, because I have to step away from the kids in order to talk to you and put a substitute with the children or explain it to them. One of the things early in my career, and this is a different, like a little bit of a tangent, but it was an eye-opener for me. When I was teaching K-12 during back to school night, I quantified how much it costs per day when a child does not come to school. And I did it because I was at a school site where we're right by Magic Mountain. So a lot of people will like pull their kids to go to Disney, pull their kids to go to Magic Mountain. And I would be like, you know what? If you just come to school and like check in, we're going to get that $55 of the budget for the day for your kid. And the second I said that, the parents were like, what? Oh my gosh, missing one day makes a difference? It was like, yeah. So in terms of communicating with the parents, you can say, if you explain, here's why during this time to this time, I am only available for emergencies, but here's when I'm available. And I would say, how is best for you to communicate? So do you prefer to text or whatnot? If you're comfortable, I wouldn't give out my personal cell, but I would set up one of those texting lines where you can text the whole class at once and update, things like that, that will not drive back to your personal information. But honestly, with preschool, I would really do, also, a lot of times we'll do like formal times. I would have, especially right now in distance learning, I'd be like, okay, I'm available on this day, from this time to this time for just Q&A. Anybody who wants to check in. If your kids miss me, they can pop in and say hi. But I would set very specific times. One thing though that I'm seeing some teachers do, Deborah, that I think is really not healthy is they'll go, I'm available on Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 to 10. Well, if your parent has an ongoing important Zoom or something at that time, it makes it tricky then to sometimes log on. So if you say, I'm available on Monday from 9 to 10, I'm available on Tuesday from 2 to 4, and then I'm available on Friday from 8 to 8:30, or whatever your time frame is, then that sets the boundaries. One thing with that though, Deborah, if you say these are my office hours, then you need to live to them. Do you know what I mean? So,
Right.
And another thing I would also tell my parents too is I'd say, my goal is to always get back to you within 24 hours. And it could be for students of all ages. But then I would say, but realistically, please give me 24 to 48 hours. And if you email me on a Friday afternoon, please anticipate that I will respond on Monday. We live in this society right now where people think if I email you at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, even if your contract ended at 3:30, that somehow you should still be responding at 5. And we set that tone. And if for some reason they want to complain, no problem. If you have documentation of all your communication and you said, here's when I said I'm available, then you won't have an issue at all. We don't want boundaries, but we have to set them or else they will take everything plus 10.
Yes. I want to also, so we have wonderful questions, and thank you so much, Deborah. That's actually a question that I think everybody can benefit from. We have another one which is really good. It's from Erica Reveles, and she says, "I always hear that as a first teacher, you should strive to survive, not to thrive." What is your opinion on that?
I totally disagree with that, because my first year teaching, I actually had a mentor who had that philosophy, and it was fascinating because whenever I would want to do anything innovative or interesting or things that piqued my interest, she would be like, "Oh no, 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 no." And then she started to say things like, "You're setting the standard too high for the other teachers, Renee. That's not what it's about. You need to do what's best for you. And if you enter with a survival mentality, how are you going to operate versus if you enter going, I'm going to kick butt this year. I'm going to thrive. These kids this is going to be fantastic. Distance learning, I'm not going to see it as a challenge. I'm going to say this is an opportunity. I'm going to be that phoenix climbing out of the ash to show that on my first year of teaching, I'm going to be a freaking superstar." Don't ever think that you need to be anything less. If you go into it with the mentality that you are going to strive for the best from the beginning, you will be able to fulfill what you're hoping to do. So I would say I wouldn't go in with the deficit model. I'd go in with an asset model. If this is going to be the best year ever, because it'll help you as you hit the challenges.
Thank you so much, Renee. Now we have one from Jessica. Does the length of time completing your credentials or major have a toll on your teaching career?
Let me get some clarification. You said that was from Jessica on that one?
Right, Jessica.
Okay.
The length of time, I guess are you referring, Jessica, maybe to the length of time you spend the credential? Like when you get out, maybe you don't feel like teaching anymore?
I've originally switched different majors. So I was originally going for early education, and now I'm trying to focus on, I'm a double major for psychology and child development. So I want to focus on
wonderful.
psychology aspect of it, like a single subject. So does that length of time, I guess completing both majors, have a toll on my credentials?
Nothing to worry about at all, Jessica. A lot of times I'll have futures say to me, "Oh my gosh, I took the CBEST like 7 times before I passed it." And I'll be like, you know what? Nobody has any record of that except the CBEST group. As long as you've got the card that says you passed, that's all we know. So it's the same thing. You've got the credential that says that you've met the requirements. That's what we know. If it took you 10 years, there's a reason why. And honestly, when because I'm somebody who reviews applications and hires, or has at different times in my life, if there's like some sort of like gap or like more of like a long time, I'm like, I want to know the story. What happened? You know, this is because Jessica is getting a degree in psychology and she started in child development and now she's moved into education. Fantastic, Jessica. It's nice to meet you. I have a degree in psychology, and like I was on like the same boat. And so you might end up finding one thing that we've learned in teacher preparation. For those where teaching comes the easiest, they're not always the top teachers. Those who struggle or take longer, or maybe they went on one path and then switched over to education at 40 or 50 or 60, those people often end up being the best people. So the fact that you spent some time with psychology and with child development, it's an asset. And so learn how to sell it as an asset. Don't ever see it as a deficit. Any of your bosses should just see you as more well-rounded and having more kind of expertise by your journey. So a little extra time in a credential program or along the way, don't worry at all. As long as you get to your end goal and get that certificate that shows your credential, that's the gatekeeper to get you in, you know, and that's it. Doesn't matter how long it took you.
We have one now from Esther. Esther, no. Hi, can I ask Renee and maybe others to share what was the most difficult, challenging experience you had in your first year and how you managed that?
First year. Oh gosh, I'm just gonna say the most embarrassing. I used to cry. I still cry. Those of you who know me, I'm like a total crier. That's just who I am. But the first year I didn't understand that was part of my process. And sometimes I didn't know how to keep it out of the classroom. And so one time I had a situation where honestly, my students just really pissed me off. And one of them was totally disrespectful and hurtful to me publicly and laughing and like just rude. And I just was really offended. And so it was like this really uncomfortable exchange, like in the classroom. And then the students went out to the buses And then one of the kids continued at the buses, like making fun of me and the reaction I had in the classroom, but made on a broader scale with all sorts of students. And I found out. And so I didn't want to, I knew he was waiting for the bus, so I didn't want to like mess up his transportation for the day and things like that. But I did call him. This is back in the days when there was a landline. But I called Josh. And I said, or I talked to his mom, because at the time he was a 4th grader. And I talked to his mom. I said, oh, would you mind having your son come in a few minutes early tomorrow? I just want to check in with him. I didn't want to tell her I was angry. I didn't want to tell her like bad stuff. I just said, I just want to check in with your son. Everything's okay. Just want to talk to him. She goes, okay. So the next morning he came in before school, and I shared with him how my feelings were hurt and how he's in my classroom, and how at the start of the year we talked about when we're in a class together, we're like family, and that we don't let family down. And I told him how embarrassing it was, first of all, to cry in front of them, but it was so embarrassing that he then made fun of it on the bus yard with other kids. And that was basically the last day I ever had a child make fun of me. I learned that if you could connect in a human way with kids as much as possible, that when they saw the humanness of you crying or something else happening, they would be filled with compassion instead of using it as an opportunity to like degrade somebody. And so that really it was hurtful. It was hard. After, that afternoon, that night I cried and I was hurt. And then the next morning I met with him and I changed the course of our relationship. He ended up being my favorite student in my classroom. And I kept in touch with him for many, many years. So something that it can be really hard and embarrassing can turn into something really positive. And I think that's important to note. You will hit rough waters the first year. But it's imperative when you find out who your buddies are. Like, okay, if you're hitting rough water, like keep my cell phone and call me and we'll help you through it. Because like maybe I haven't dealt with exactly what you're dealing with, but man, I've had all sorts of stuff over the years. And I've had a parent yell at me. I've had all sorts of stuff. And so maybe as a colleague, I can have some additional tools and strategies too. So human side for sure. I know we're coming pretty close, but can we take a few more?
We have about 3 minutes, but I really think there's so many great questions, and I think this one is really good.
I see one I want already too. We have to cover the last one from Eileen too, for sure.
Okay, so let's try to do it. So this one says, I am a very young new teacher, and I wanted to know if you have any tips for a teacher who does not get a lot of support.
Ooh, let's think. Tips for a teacher who does not get a lot of support. First of all, by young, tell me a little bit, like, what's the, like, is it not support from your colleagues, not support from the kids and families? Like, what is the not support? Or both?
Jasmine, that was your question. Jasmine, no, are you still here?
She might not be able to unmute.
Should we go to the to Carol's?
Sure.
Okay, so how can I do more as a one-on-one aide in the pandemic?
Wait,
can
I was gonna say, Yasmin answered in the chat. She said yes.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes. What?
So you're not getting support from your parents, from the families, from the kids, and from your colleagues. Okay, that happens sometimes. And that's when you need to say to yourself, where can my support system lie then? And it might be that your support for that year or for that semester or for whatever is outside of school. And maybe it's your mom, or maybe it's somebody maybe it's me. Maybe it's a mentor who you had while you were on your teacher preparation pathway. Sometimes our supports don't exist on our school site. There are times when you might even feel sabotaged in your work environment. Please know there are some of us on the line who have lived through that and who have survived through that and who have gone on to thrive after that. And so just reach out. If you're not getting it on your campus, like call me. Seriously, you've got a number right now, and I am dead serious when I say I'll text, I'll call, I'll talk with you. I can be your support. I was in charge of teacher preparation at a college for 14 years or something. So I'm a big believer in what we do. Big believer.
Wonderful.
And I did earlier add Renee's email and cell phone number to the chat. If you scroll up.
Good.
Okay, so let's go with Carol. So we were saying, how can I do more as a one-on-one aide in pandemic? Can I go over my teachers and ask the principal for more initiative tasks? I feel like I'm hitting a brick wall now.
That's really tricky. That's really tricky. I wouldn't go over to the principal first. What I would consider doing is sending an email to your teacher that you work with directly and CCing the principal. And just so you include the principal, but you're not writing to them. So you write to the teacher you work with, you include administration on the email just as a CC so they know they're carbon copied. And you basically say, oh, I've seen all the great things we're doing with this, this, and this. I have an idea for 5 things that I can do or 3 things I can do. I'm interested in doing this, this, and this. Please let me know which or all of these I'm allowed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you just, so that the principal knows what's going on, but you're not ratting the teacher out and going above them. You do not, if you are a one-on-one, if you're a para, you do not want to get blackballed by a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a mess, especially if it's somebody who's super veteran. I hate to say that, but I'm just being honest with you.
We are at 2:00. I want to let everybody know and be conscious of everybody's time.
Can I say one more though, real quick?
I was going to say, if you guys are okay, we can answer. There's really good ones right here. I think it's the next one. And it says from Heather, please excuse me if I butcher your last name, Primus. Thank you for the helpful information. What career pathway advice can you give for a new ECE teacher who does not want to be in the classroom teacher, but wants to support teachers and schools in social emotional curriculum?
Okay, great. Also, anybody who's willing to stay on, please know I'm going to touch on Heather's question, Marini's question, and Aileen's question. Aileen's one is hitting my heart. I want to make sure I
was
get
going to say that right now.
I have to get to that.
I'm like, no, Aileen, we got to get to it.
No, it's okay. As long as people are okay staying on for a little bit.
Okay.
What career pathway advice can you give a new ECE teacher who does not want to be a classroom teacher, but wants to support teachers and schools in social emotional curriculum? You need to reinvent yourself. You need to create yourself as a presenter, as a professional development person. You kind of need to, what normally happens is people normally do time on the floor. You know that in early childhood. Then we move into administration, and then we move into professional development. If you want to start at PD and kind of that other kind of career pathway from the start, then you have to rebrand yourself that way. And it could be, you know, Heather, maybe we contract you a little bit with our group and you come do a couple workshops here. You know, I mean, so there's all sorts of opportunities for way that can happen. So Heather, before you log off today, can you make sure to get our contact info so we can touch base after this to talk more about that, please? Okay, and I'm going to go to Marini's now.
Okay.
How do you efficiently or effectively differentiate instruction? To me, it's one of the most elusive things in teaching. I've taught from 4th to 12th and find it really difficult. Okay, oh, I love it, reading groups and whatnot. Okay, so one of the things with Marini's for recommendations for differentiating, every time I was when I was best at differentiating, it was when I was completely obsessive about my classroom. Differentiating truly is meeting every single student where they are. If you are in like if you're teaching a 4th grade class and you're differentiating truly, you're probably running 5 different math groups with 30 to 35 students in the classroom. I know one time I was teaching 5th grade and I did an assessment with my kids at the start of the year that I realized I had 9 kids who should already be in algebra, even though they were in my 5th grade classroom. So I got creative. One of the things, Marini, with differentiating is really tapping into resources. At that time, I was a teacher in a K-8 district, but I knew that one of the parents in my classroom was a college counselor at College of the Canyons. So I contacted him and I said, hey, Garrett, I've got this group of kids that's like really strong in math. Do you have any ideas? And he literally was like, oh my gosh, Renee, my bachelor's is in math. I was like, what? So a college faculty would come to my classroom every single Friday to do specific targeted differentiated instruction with my 5th graders, just that the 9 of them. So a lot of I mean, honestly, I often had so many different groups running because I'm a big believer in differentiating, and also a lot of like individual projects with kids and just all sorts of things. One of the things I did is I tapped into parents. Any person who was willing to volunteer in my area, I had them in. I always had fieldwork teachers. I always had student teachers. Anybody who wanted to volunteer, I found a way to get them in my classroom. Right now, we don't have that. And so that it's going to be trickier in terms of what differentiating looks like online. But once you can bring the people, that was something that I found to be really effective. Also, another thing that helped me with differentiating was teaching multiple grades. You know, I spent years teaching kinder, I spent years teaching fifth, but then I also went to fourth, and I also did reading specialist and first, second, third, fourth. And so the more I taught the whole gamut of elementary school grades, the better I was at differentiating for all the different needs for the kids. But I'm not going to lie, people who are strong differentiators are usually completely obsessive compulsive and doing it like 24/7. So you can kind of try to differentiate, but within balance. Another thing that I would do too when differentiating is I'd ask what kids need. A lot of times we just take it with just assessments and what we think they need, but it's better to find out what they need or find out what they're interested in. If you've got somebody that's so academically gifted compared to the rest of your classroom, put them on their own program. Figure out whatever they're like crazy about, and then create math related to it, create science related to it. Really have them work independently, but then socialize with the rest of the group. Another thing I did also, and every elementary school is different about this, but those of you who are elementary teachers, there were times when I would send kids out to different grade levels to get their subject matter. So if I had somebody who was in my fourth grade classroom and they were stellar in math, then I'd have them go spend a day in fifth. If they could knock out all that curriculum, then I'd put them in sixth grade math for the year, and I'd work with that teacher, and it really worked out well. It was a lot of sometimes controversial stuff I did, but I found that when you talk with people and you just ask, you kind of can make it work. And do stuff that's different. That's one thing that'll gets kids excited, gets parents excited too. Okay, we've got one more.
Eileen.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I love this. There's one here that says, how do we stay as motivated as you? I'm not motivated every day.
I want to let everybody know Renee Marshall is the Oprah of our group. We call her the Oprah of teachers.
But I'm human though. Like, I'm not motivated every day. I'm not, but I live my life in an asset model. I got to be real honest with you guys on the line. When I was a kid, when I was 10 years old, my dad passed away and I found him dead, and it was really crappy. But here's the thing, like, so early on in my life that I learned that I could have like completely taken that and had that be who I was and guide my future forward. Or I could flip it and go, wow, that was really awful with what happened to my dad. And sometime in my life, I'm going to find value from that experience, and I'm going to keep moving forward. And that was what I chose to do. So there are times where I literally just, kind of slap myself. Like, come on, I'm the model. I've got to be motivated. I've got to keep going. So, but I do things that nourish my soul also, for sure. Okay, I think this is probably the last question. Thank you, everybody who stayed on. I greatly appreciate it. Eileen says, I've heard from a mentor teacher that it is best to start off with a strict attitude and move forward by easing off the students to avoid behavioral issues. Where do you stand by that or with that? I understand it's important to set rules, but does starting out with being mean or with mean being someone that you're but does that starting out with mean being somebody that you're not? I don't believe that. I have never, ever, ever believed that philosophy. And I've had colleagues that have simultaneously been in my grade level and been my friends who have that philosophy. People don't thrive in fear. People survive in fear. So if you are creating a fear-based culture, then you will not bring out the best in your students. You will not. Do you want people to just cower to you and just go, yes, 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 and have a quiet room? Because if that's what you want, this isn't the place to be, And that's one of the things that's kind of tricky, A lot of people think we need to be really hard. We don't. Another thing, for any of you in K-12, can I highly, highly, highly suggest, don't have any rules up your first day of school. That is the day that you create them with your students. You do all sorts of icebreakers. Maybe we need a PD on how to start off the school year.
Yes.
That'll be like a 5-day, or you have no idea how much I love
so excited. I'm like, oh my God, we need to do a training on how to start off your first year.
If you guys are game, I could totally do it. One of the things that I did every single year, it was the best thing ever. The first day was the first week was all about getting to know you no matter what grade level you're at. I have all sorts of resources I could share with that. But on the very first day, after we talked, played, and hung out for the first 4 to 5 hours of the day, on that last chunk of the day, I would sit down with the class and I'd say, okay, let's brainstorm every single rule that you think we need in the class. And we'd sit there for an hour. Here's the best thing. Kids are way stricter than us. Mm-hmm. They came up with an entire whiteboard filled with rules. And then I said, it's going to be real simple, because in our school, in our classroom, we're running a democracy. I'm here to guide you, but your voice is just as important as my voice. And so then what I would have my students do, and this sounds so cheesy, but this is tangible, you guys will get this. I'd have the students put their head down, almost like heads up, 7-Up. They put their head down and they'd get the opportunity. I would read off every single rule, and I'd let each child choose 5 rules that they wanted to vote for. So that way they felt like they had voice. Remember, I'm reading like 40 different choices. And then I'd tally, and I'd tally, and I'd tally. And then the kids, I go, okay, everybody look. Let's see which of these 40 rules, which 5 of these has the most votes. Do we agree on these? How do we want them written? And then we as a class, I write down those 5 rules or 3 rules. Never do more than 5. Kids don't need more than 5. If you can keep 3 to 5, that's ideal. They don't need 1 either. Don't tell me they need the golden rule. It's not tangible. You need things that kids will get and in their wording. And so I'd write down these 5 things. And then and then before the day was over, I'd give them free choice or something fun to do because it's first day. I'd have the kids come up one at a time and do a full signature at the bottom of our list of class rules. The next morning, they would be posted prominently in the classroom. And at the very top, it would say, our class constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment a child disobeyed the rules,
oh
wait, but you guys decided that we weren't going to steal. We decided that we were going to treat people nicely. And you just you signed that. Are you disagreeing with what you said originally? Because if so, we need to have a talk. And the kids would be like, oh my gosh, you're right. I created the rules and I signed them. Guess what? They create the rules, they sign them, they live up to them. We don't have to fear them. We don't have to scare them. We don't at all. I promise you. Everybody wants to be nurtured, loved, and to feel competent. I have always, no matter if I was teaching 3-year-olds or I was teaching, my 40-year-olds in my college classes, they have to love you before they're going to learn from you. So if you're going to start off strict and nasty, I'm sorry, it's going to backfire. You're going to have a couple kids who'll be so compliant that you'll feel like you're doing good. And then the relational side will just go, and it won't be worth it. So don't believe them when I say that you have to be strict. We can set healthy parameters with kids very early, help them to create the rules, help them to feel the ownership in the classroom, and most importantly, help them to feel empowered to take charge of their education and to be the student they want to be. That really should be our goal.
Okay, we have 2 new messages. Okay. So everybody says, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry we went over, but I appreciate so many of you staying on.
It was such a great workshop. I want to thank everybody who joined and who stood with us. Please reach out to us if you guys have any needs, any requests for us to do. I really like these workshops. We need to continue these and see what else we can bring for you guys. Renee, any other words?
Real quickly, if anybody's interested, I am hosting 2 additional workshops this week. I have one coming up on Wednesday that's focusing on if any of you are thinking about becoming a faculty member at a college and want some tips on how to interview and what it looks like to do that route. And then I have another workshop coming up on Friday morning at 9 a.m. and it's basically focusing on positive discipline and behavior management. And I honestly, oh my gosh, you guys, I could talk for like 5 hours on that one. I don't know how I'm going to do it in an hour, but that one has got slides with it and it's a really good discussion. So I hope that you can join us for some other workshops. We have a ton happening through the region. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Yes, my email is education@renee/marshall.com.
Esther says, I already signed up for it. I'm super excited to hear from you again. I'm telling you, having Renee is awesome.
We're here to be a resource, you guys, so please let us know, and especially if you have any feedback for any professional development this summer, we'd love to help provide what you need. Thank you so much, everybody.
Those of you asking how you can join the Friday workshop, you have to, if you have to register like you registered for this one. You would have to go to Friday. I think it's still open, right?
You know what, though, Yadira? It's possible that they don't have the link for the booklet because these are on Eventbrite. So somebody could have found it there.
Yeah, I'm gonna put
it up too.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to put a link there right now. That is the link to the flip book that has all of the sessions for the entire month of May, the virtual workshops, all the different sessions.
And then we have, sorry, Bobby, go ahead.
It's hosted on the LA Regional Teach site. So it's teachlarc.org/ virtual-workshop. That's it. It has the whole program on there.
And
And
then
all of Renee's sessions are on there. Yadira has some sessions in there. It goes for the whole month of May.
I want to point out, Renee, so we have Maggie's asking if we can get the list of 10 tips mentioned, and I did write them down so we can I don't know, do we have contact of who registered, like their emails? Maybe
Oh,
we'll
Renee can send them out to the people
Okay.
that register for the conference.
Yeah.
I can absolutely send them out. I've got my little notes that I take, so I can absolutely send them out.
Okay. Wonderful, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you at other workshops. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, you guys.
Stop recording, okay, guys?
Okay, yeah, stop recording.
Thanks, everyone.